Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk to you about a surprise bonus episode of Sandman that just released on Netflix, I guess yesterday. We thought the season was over at 10 episodes, but no, it now has an 11th episode. So I wanted to talk about it. It actually is kind of a multi-part episode. It had two stories in it, one being shorter than the other. And the first one was called A Dream of a Thousand Cats, and it was animated, which is interesting. I wasn't expecting that either. It starts off with a young cat and an older cat who are, I guess, friends, and they're taking a walk to a cemetery to meet a specific lady cat, along with a whole bunch of other cats from elsewhere in the area. And when they arrive at this cemetery and the lady greets them all, she begins to tell them a story about her past and how she was all happy living with a family until she accidentally got pregnant. Familiar story, right? And had kittens that the male of the household didn't want to have to deal with or support. So he took them from her and put them in a sack and drowned them. And she explains how even from a distance she could feel them dying. And it was very sad. And she says that when this occurred, she realized that cats can't actually coexist with humanity. And she slept and dreamt. And during the dream, she met a vulture with no flesh on its neck or head, who sent her to a cave to meet the cat of dreams. When she gets there, she's stopped by a griffin, a unicorn, and a dragon, who eventually let her pass when she says, "No, I'm a cat. I can make my way. Leave me alone." So she meets this cat of dreams, but of course, it's Dream in the form of a big black cat. And she asks him why things are as they are. He showed her that in a past age, cats were giant and ruled the world, while humans were mouse-sized and hunted by cats and kept by cats. But that when 1,000 human beings dreamt together about a different world, things changed to how they are now, and actually erased the cat world from the beginning of time onward so that it never even existed. She now seeks to find enough cats to believe that this dream thing could work, and who would dream things back to the way they were along with her. And that's basically the whole mini episode. So it was kind of weird. There have been cat-based stories before, and so this fit in with those. But the idea of a cat world where cats are giant and humans are little is very strange, and certainly very different from the rest of the season. So it was very surprising. All I can say is cats, good luck with that. And where were dogs? Dogs were not mentioned to this at all, and I find that to be unacceptable because dogs are awesome. Anyway, this episode had David and Georgia Tennant in it at the end. They were the owners of the little cat that went to the cemetery. And it's funny because at the end, the cat does start to dream, and you see the cat behaving in ways that would make you think that in the dream they are eating a human based on the way the eating of humans was depicted when the other cat was telling her story. So that was that. But the real meat of the episode was the second story, which was called Calliope, and it stars the actor who played Rory in Doctor Who, and of course, who played the original captain of the Wave Rider on Legends of Tomorrow on the CW. He's a really good actor. Anyway, he is playing as a famous author, and as the episode opens, he's giving a lecture about writing. I guess he's reading through his book and sort of taking questions and whatnot. And when it's over, one student brings something in a jar to him and asks him when his new book is coming out, and he seems uneasy the whole time, which would seem is at least partly because he's having trouble writing his next book and hasn't been able to write for a long time. He's just got this one successful book that's come out. He then brings the thing that the student brought to him to an old guy named Marasmus, who, by the way, is played by a gentleman who once played the Master on Doctor Who. And it turns out that the thing is a wad of hair in the shape of a stomach created when someone repeatedly ate their own hair. I don't know what the significance of that was, but that's what the object is. Anyway, the guy takes this author to a back room where apparently he has captured the muse Calliope because he ran into a similar situation where he had had some success writing, but then couldn't write anymore. And he found a way to capture Calliope, who, of course, is a muse, and basically used her to get inspiration so that he could continue writing successful books. But at some point, it just stopped working, or people just stopped liking his books, even though he was able to write them. And he said, you know, you brought me this thing or whatever. And in fact, I don't really tell you why, but he says, I'm giving her to you. And he gives her to the other author. And she is now bound to him the way she was bound to the older guy who originally captured her. And she's stunned at this. She said, you know, she says, you told me you would free me before you died. And he said, well, I'm an author and we lie. So anyway, the younger guy is reluctant to keep her, you know, in such a way as like her owner. But he does anyway, saying that he'll let her go if she inspires him to write one book. She declines to help him, so he tries to buy her help with gifts, but she explains that he needs to pray to the gods for inspiration, that keeping a muse captive is not the way to go, and then implores him to free her. When his agent calls to let him know that he'd better get writing or he's going to lose the deal that he has for the, you know, the next book, he rapes Calliope, which apparently allows him to be inspired by her afterwards. Calliope then calls out to the Fates, who tell her that maybe Dream can help her, but she doesn't think he will because she's wronged him in the past when they were husband and wife. Besides which, this apparently is taking place during the 100 years where he was being held captive himself. Meanwhile, the author has in fact been able to write the next book, and it's successful, and they're going to make a movie out of it. But of course, Calliope is still unhappy, and she learns from a newspaper that people who were unable to wake up because Dream was being held in captivity have woken up, which I guess lets her know that Dream is no longer captive. The author, in conversation with, I guess, his publisher or whatever, learns that the old man author guy, Erasmus or whoever, took his own life not long ago by way of poisoning. Calliope reaches out to Dream somehow, I guess in a similar way that she reached out to the Fates, and he comes to see her. He tells her that he's going to help her to get free, and he visits the author demanding that he set her free. And when the author says he can't because if he does, he won't have ideas, Dream tells him that if ideas are what he wants, he'll have them in abundance. The author then starts to have nightmares all the time. I think even when awake, basically. He'd get them when he's sleeping and basically get like invasive thoughts while he was awake that are sort of nightmarish. And he can't stop thinking up ideas, and it's torturing him. So he decides to send one of his students to free Calliope on his word when other students see that he has somehow hurt himself and needs to go to the hospital. So he's having a hard time. His students are like, what's wrong? And he says, he says to this one student, you've got to go and free this, you know, open the door and tell this woman there that she can go. Of course, the student goes there and doesn't see Calliope, but because he said she could go and because she opens the door, Calliope is in fact able to leave. Once Calliope's been freed, Dream visits her and she thanks him for his help and asks if he still hates her because she left him. And she asks Dream to stop tormenting the author because, you know, he doesn't deserve to be tormented forever in her estimation, which he agrees to do. And apparently they have a son or a child. She says something about they have a child together. I don't know. Anyway, when the student returns to the author, she's carrying a copy of a book by the older author that I guess had been re-released or something, saying that all she found was the book. But he realizes that just by opening the door, she freed Calliope since he had said the words, and can barely even think, let alone formulate any ideas. So he's not in a good way, even after, I guess, Dream has stopped sending him crazy, invasive thoughts. His mind is basically, he's scatterbrained now. He can't think at all because it did so much damage to him. And that's pretty much where it ends. Calliope just goes off on her own, and that was the end. I thought this was a good story. It's not unlike other stories we've seen in other media. But, you know, a good story nonetheless. Particularly good was the scene between Calliope and the Fates where they explained to her that they can't help her because the way she was captured was according to the rules of the laws of, you know, the supernatural world that they all inhabit. And, you know, it goes to the human condition in that people will sometimes do crazy things when they're desperate, but that it doesn't always work out, that you sometimes end up worse off than you were. And it also sort of speaks to the power of Dream, and not only his power, but his willingness to apply pressure to get what he wants, to use his power to do what he thinks is the right thing, even if it hurts somebody. So, who, you know, is hurting somebody else. So, yeah, don't mess with Dream. But yeah, I thought it was a good episode. I don't know why they didn't just put it in with the regular season. That's kind of a weird thing because it only came out a couple weeks ago. So I don't know why they didn't just include it. But yeah, it was a nice surprise. And I think it was just as good as the other episodes in the season that came before the one where they started doing the whole thing about the vortex, which was a horrible arc, in my opinion, or not a great arc, I should say. But yeah, so I had done the full season review. So I thought I would come and review this particular episode since it came out and is now part of the season, as it were. But that's really it. I'll be back with more content soon. I'm going to get out of here. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.